them. The struggle point for Draymond would not be like blowing his top and screaming at everyone and punching players, which is really, if you think about it, kind of a wild perception that he would just be doing that every night. The harder thing would be probably the same thing that has been hard for a lot of great players when they tried to coach. They're coaching players that aren't as good as them.
Right.
And so they can't do what they do, and that makes them mad.
Like Magic Johnson.
Right.
The frustration of Magic going out there and, having to try to tell these guys, don't do what I say, do as I do, do as I did. And I did this a certain way, and now you can't do that. Why can't you play like I played? Well, Coach Magic, I'm not as good as you are. So that's why I can't do what you were doing. And that's probably where his frustration would lie. But I do think his frustration would also lie with the officials. And I can't see him.
Who doesn't?
Right.
Who doesn't? Who was it? The Pacers that said, we're going to send copies
Rick
of
Carlisle.
78 calls
plays,
to the league. And everybody gets.
Michael Malone ran out on the floor and didn't get a technical foul.
Right.
And, you see a lot of coaches blow their stack. Steve Kerr gets techs, but I don't know if Draymond Green would be able to avoid getting, 2 techs and run more often than other coaches do.
Again, though, if we think about it from the perspective of a head coach and the refs, it's not like Draymond has ever got, because you've brought up the physicality a lot. It's not like Draymond Green's ever shoved a ref. Draymond Green gets tangled up and totally out of his head when he's twisted up in physical battle with people.
Right.
Obviously. Yusef and
Rudy
and Steven Adams and Rudy and LeBron.
Right.
Yes. It's not like he's ever hauled off and thrown a ref into the second row like he's wrestling.
No.
So, like, he'd get upset with the refs like every other NBA head coach. And he would yell at them, and sometimes he'd get thrown out like every other head coach in the NBA.
I wonder how many how many ejections he has, Steve Kerr.
Not a lot.
Yeah.
Not really his style, but,
No.
Yeah.
And, most coaches don't, and, you're allowed to get ejected, and usually I don't think that the head coaches have, technical foul suspension points. You're more likely to get fined $100,000, and I know that, coaches have been fined for, Rudy Gobert just got fined for doing the money sign to the referee, intimating that the refs were getting paid off in a certain way.
Remember, there's also sort of a built-in advantage for a coach to not get the double T and thrown out, which is the coach has to stay over there at the bench. Refs, honestly, I know people won't want to give them credit for this, they usually do a good job of running away.
Yeah.
When the conversation is over, it's like, I'm out of here, I'm going to run the other way. Well, the player can follow him. We're going up and down the court with each other.
Right.
So Draymond can keep joying. The head coach, dude, you can stay over there by the bench. Like, yeah, you can run on the floor, but now you're definitely getting thrown out.
Right.
I don't think he would do that. So I found that conversation to be fascinating in terms of all of the stuff that's not, even though we may know it, we know how smart Draymond is as a player, but I do think that that's relevant in this conversation because when we think Draymond Green, we do. We think of the 15 moments that tick us off.
Yeah.
And that's it. And it's like, well, that's not all of Draymond Green.
It's not.
That's not all he's had to offer.
15's being generous. I think you could be closer to 50 if you really wanted to look at...
Really?
Oh, yeah.
A lot of those are just, that's it, like a technical foul. So what? There's only, actually...
There's been 2 techs and eject, and you lose the game because of it. That's happened twice.
Right, but I would argue there's actually less than 15 in terms of those things that really are dude.
Well...
You know what I mean?
Maybe you have more tolerance than I do for...
a technical's a technical. I'm talking about Nurkic, LeBron, Steven Adams, Rudy Gobert... It's not like he's
Jordan Poole.
He's not choked someone 15 times.
No.
There are a handful of things that have really gotten people hot and bothered, and rightfully so.
Right.
I don't actually think those are terribly relevant when it comes to this idea, which, again, if you're just joining us on John Wall's podcast, Draymond Green talking about coaching.
With the conversations that I've had with Joe Laker over the years and him saying to me, yo, when you're done, I can see you one day coaching this team when Steve's done. I can see you working with this team. I would love to see that. that means the world to me because that means the man that owned the organization that I play for is watching me play basketball and saying, this guy can one day coach my team.
Okay, so that's what has this conversation underway. And by the way, there's a bunch of stuff that Draymond said on separate podcasts just in the last 24 hours that we really need to unpack.
I can't wait.
But
I can't wait.
I think you should also reboot what you said on the crossover about the idea of Draymond Green coaching the Warriors.
If he's the head coach of this team, I'm out. I'm going to renounce my fandom, and I'm going to find a new team. That, to me, would be a deal breaker. Is that what you want me to say? Because I said it before.
I don't want you to say it.
And I'll say it again.
Unless you mean it.
And I believe it. And I said it twice now, and I believe it because that, to me, would be the kind of representation that I don't want as an organization. And I look at Steve Kerr as a head coach, and I'm proud to be a fan of that team because of the way he comports himself. And, you know, he's not perfect. Nobody is perfect as a head coach. I like the way he represents the team and the brand. I like the product that he's put out. I like what he's done with this team. 4 championships. It's easy to like. There's a lot to like. Mark Jackson was a coach that I didn't want to have represent the brand anymore based on what I learned about Mark Jackson and what he showed us. His homophobia, his exclusionary practices as the head coach. It became something that was a distaste to me. It wasn't to the point where I was going to renounce my fandom. I never had to get to that point because they did it for me and they got rid of him. But if Draymond Green was the head coach, I would not want to be a fan of this team.
It's a fascinating comment because if you dislike Draymond to that level, I guess I would ask, why are you still a fan now?
I like Draymond Green, the basketball player.
Why?
Because he's a winning basketball player.
He doesn't represent the organization?
He doesn't represent the organization the way he would as the head coach.
Huh. I mean, he's a leader. He's
a leader, but he's not the leader.
He's certainly the on-court leader. He's the locker room leader.
I've spoken on this very show about my distaste for Draymond Green as a basketball player.
Okay.
And I was the one who said back in February that I would not be bummed if he got traded.
But why is making, by the way, more money now as a player than he would make if he were the head coach?
It's not about the money.
Well, but
it's about the representation and the symbolism of him being the head coach.
That is representation. I guess my point is, or my question is, why would the transition to a coaching role change it at such a level that you'd go from where you've been, which is this is my favorite team of all the teams in the Bay Area, to a point where you would not be a fan anymore? That's not a small leap. That is a significant
It's a big
jump.
leap, no doubt.
Just because he moves over a couple of seats?
Right, because that's all it is. He's just moving over a couple of seats.
It's more than that, but I totally think
it's the symbolism of what that would be.
But you're downplaying who he is in this organization right now.
I'm really not. He is a player on the team, and he's a player who's near the end of his career, and he's a player that I was, looking for them to trade. I was a player who I was looking for them to not sign. So my comments about Draymond Green are well-founded, and they're on the record. And I said this 2 years ago. I said it a year ago. This is not a new take for me. This is a player that I've not been a fan of for a long time now.
That's one thing, though. But
right.
He's not a player on this team.
So I'm supposed to go from him being a player to now I want him to be my head coach?
No, my point is to go so far as to say you renounce your fandom if he were the coach. My guess would be, with him being one of the spotlighted players on this team for the better part of a decade, you would be having more of a visceral reaction now than you do.
Absolutely.
Yes, you don't love him, but it hasn't changed a dang thing about the way you go about either loving or covering the team.
Well, it's because he's offset by other players who are on the team and a coach that I love and a GM that I respect and an owner that I respect and all the rest of it. So you can tolerate it. You're not going to love every single member of your organization, but if they elevate him to head coach and he becomes the face of the franchise and he's the guy for 82 games, I'm out.
Okay. It's really a stunning statement. I find it to be. We're presented by Fremont Bank.